Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
In just a few days, on Sunday, the 5th of May, I'm going to be speaking in Riverside, California. After that, I'll be in Little Rock, Arkansas, May the 19th, Denver, Colorado, for the Colorado Secular Conference. That's the weekend of July the 27th. They have confirmed the Florida Free Thought Convention for the first weekend of November, and there is more to be added. All that information on my website, sethandrews.net/events, okay? I had a party at my house a while back, and we watched the 1980 classic sci-fi film, Flash Gordon. I told this story on a live stream a few weeks ago, so if, this is old hat to you, please forgive me, but I don't know, I just felt it warranted mention here. And those people who had never seen Flash Gordon, if you'd rented it today, you would wonder what we were talking about. It really was kind of the product of its time, and there's just a sort of a cult celebrity that film enjoys. And I remember we had a ball. My friends Steve and Joe and I went to the theater. It was the Fox Theater on 51st and Harvard in Tulsa. We had our parents drop us off around noon, and we watched the film 3 consecutive times. That's how geeky we were. Watching Flash Gordon, starring a guy named Sam Jones, who I don't know that I've really seen in anything else. And he kind of fell off the radar after that. Well, we had a party at my house, and Flash Gordon fans arrived. One guy even had, his name is Corey, had a Flash Gordon t-shirt on that was awesome. And we all cranked it up and had a great time watching Flash. Well, I noticed on Amazon there's a documentary called Life After Flash. And it picks up the life of Sam Jones and what he's been about. And it talks to some of the players behind the scenes, the director and many of the key actors, and even gets into the soundtrack, the iconic soundtrack by Queen. And so I'm watching the documentary thinking, hey, this is great. I'd love to see how Flash Gordon was made and kind of look behind the curtain, so to speak. Now, I'm a sucker for movie trivia. That behind the scenes, useless information. It means nothing to no one, but just the knowing of it gives joy and happiness. I'm that guy. And I love behind-the-scenes documentaries. One of my favorite films is called Hearts of Darkness, a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. The documentary is actually much better than the film. And so I'm kind of that guy. And I love behind-the-scenes stuff with Flash Gordon. I mean, when you learn some of the things that were happening behind the curtain, it just brings a whole new dimension to it. For example, did you know that they had offered the role of Flash Gordon to Kurt Russell? Escape from New York, Kurt Russell. Big Trouble in Little China, Kurt Russell. Tombstone, Kurt Russell. The Hateful Eight, Kurt Russell was going to be Flash Gordon. He turned it down, and thank goodness. They were considering at one point Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Flash Gordon. Can you imagine? They found Sam Jones, the lead actor. Dino De Laurentiis didn't take a casting call to discover this guy. You know how Sam Jones was discovered and given the role of Flash Gordon? Dino De Laurentiis actually saw him on television. He was on an episode of The Dating Game. And he just saw this tall, strapping, handsome young man and said, hey, there's Flash Gordon. I mean, how does that happen? Did you know that in the comic books, and I didn't know this because I never read the graphic novels or comics for Flash Gordon, he used to be a polo player. In the film, he plays professional football. In the comics, it's polo. Before the iconic rock band Queen was commissioned to do the soundtrack, Pink Floyd was being considered for the music. Here's a little interesting movie mistake kind of thing that I thought was interesting. At the very beginning, there's this legendary scene where Ming the Merciless is talking to Clytus, his number one. And he says, Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today? And then Clytus says, look, over here, it's a planet, an obscure body in the SK system. The inhabitants call it Earth. And then Ming, for his own amusement, decides to rain down natural disasters and destroy this planet. All right, if no one's heard or very few people have heard of Earth, why do they already have an earthquake button hardwired into their apocalypse machine? Like there's a button. It says earthquake. I mean, I don't know if that counts as a contradiction. Maybe the engineers knew about Earth. That's what I'm expecting in the film, okay? The documentary begins, and it's pretty good. You know, they get into some of the making of the film and the casting and some of the artistic choices and how the film was taken off, and many celebrities, well-known celebrities who still have a hugely fond place in their heart for Flash Gordon. And so I'm having a good time. And then they get into the life of Sam Jones, and the film begins to diverge. Sam Jones is a Jesus freak, and not just a Jesus follower in the casual sense. I mean, the guy comes off as one of those sort of name it and claim it, full of the Holy Spirit, Jesus freak type people. So that's how I mean it when I say Jesus freak, okay? Now, if you want to watch the documentary, knock yourself out, I'm going to save you that 2 hours, because I'm not really convinced that a Flash Gordon fan is going to really engage with the documentary, because it starts being about the film, and then it all of a sudden becomes about Sam Jones and his religious faith. And you see him, he's walking outside the building of a Comic-Con or something, and he's talking to space. He's talking to the sky. Lord, we thank you for this day. We ask you for success today as we go in and deliver excellence and blah, 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 blah. He was talking like a lot of the sort of Assembly of God type people speak. You know, they just walk around. Lord, thank you for today's sunshine. Thank you, Lord, that I found my car keys. Lord, I thank you for my good health today, or that my cough isn't as bad as it was yesterday. And just kind of, they verbalize this stuff all the time. And that's kind of what Sam was doing, right? Flash Gordon. 61-year-old Flash Gordon's talking to Jesus. All right, fine. Well, I figure that's necessary if you're going to profile the guy's life and where he's at and what he's doing. That's part of his story. This is what documentaries do. But the film then more and more dwells on this religious angle. Now, I don't know if the producers are religious or what, but they talk to his pastor and his pastor's wife, and they talk to the religious friend, a guy who looks like he, at one time in his life, led a Baptist church youth group. And then they've got a family of 4 or 5 on camera, and they're all Jesus freaks, and they're talking about how great a man of faith he is doing the Lord's good work. All right, fine. I mean, the story is, and it's an old one, his life was on the rocks, his marriage and his family and his identity and everything were all on the rocks. He was in the lowest point of his life, and then he just surrendered it all, and he gave up ego, he gave up himself, and made it all about Jesus, and everything changed. Sam Jones referenced the Rick Warren book, Purpose-Driven Life. This book has sold, I think, like 45 million copies. It's just massively popular in Christian circles. Dan Barker, an atheist and co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, wrote a book sort of turning that title on its ear called Life-Driven Purpose, which talks about how we can self-generate purpose. It doesn't have to be handed to us by a superstition. But apparently all of this religious stuff came in. Sam Jones and his wife embraced it, and their life is now amazing and kumbaya, and he's doing the Lord's good work as and I shit you not, a border security guy. So Flash Gordon's doing border security. All right? So, and this is my point. This is where I'm going with this story. He says in the documentary that, the Hollywood doors had kind of closed. That chapter was over, and he'd gone on to make provision for his family. And he works for a living, and he's out there just doing what he does, and good for him, okay? Well, Seth MacFarlane, creator of Family Guy and The Orville, and a lot of other projects, was apparently and is apparently a huge fan of Flash Gordon, the classic film from 37 years ago. And he wanted to make Flash Gordon a character, Sam Jones, a character in the movie Ted, which is this irreverent movie filled with F-bombs and sexual innuendo and all this other stuff, okay? So he wants Sam Jones to sort of come back to the big screen and make an appearance in this R-rated film filled with sexual innuendo and F-bombs and all the stuff that Sam Jones, as a Jesus freak, is supposed to stand against. Well, Sam Jones is then saying, well, you know, it's amazing how the Lord works. The Lord opens doors, like I thought I was done with Hollywood. You know, but once I committed myself to Jesus and I gave up my ego, well, that's when God began to reopen the doors in Hollywood. Now, what Sam Jones is saying, he is saying that it's Jesus' will that Seth MacFarlane produce a naughty teddy bear comedy so that Sam Jones could once again use his gifts as an actor on the big screen. And apparently, from the look on his face, Sam Jones doesn't remotely see any irony in this. They interviewed his son, who's as squeaky clean as the day is long. His son is like a Quaker, almost. And he's like, I didn't like the film. It was just very awful. It was just so dirty, and it was this and that. But, you know, I mean, my father went in, and he actually had them tone down his lines. I mean, his lines were actually a lot filthier than they ended up being. And so, I mean, at least he did that. And so you can see them trying to jam this square peg of Jesus into the round hole of an R-rated Hollywood production filled with quote-unquote adult humor, apparently completely unaware or totally in denial about the fact that Jesus ordered the universe so that Sam Jones might be cast in a movie which gleefully breaks the second commandment. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Meanwhile, they're saying Jesus, H, fuck, and Jesus Christ and all that stuff. You got the bear doing bong hits. You've got simulated orgasms. You got talk about anal sex. There's a scene where Mark Wahlberg and the bear are telling a thunderstorm to suck their dicks. Teddy has a party in the living room. I think there's 4 prostitutes. Got 4 hookers right there. This is God's will. God made this happen. The Lord does work in mysterious ways. I just couldn't finish the documentary. I couldn't finish it. By the end, there was so much Jesus talk and God's will and God's divine purpose and blah, 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 blah. I just couldn't finish the movie. It was so uneven in tone and ultimately so uninterested in really talking about the making of and the behind the scenes of the film Flash Gordon. And if we're talking about the after Flash, the life after Flash title, how about the lives of the other actors? How about the legacy of the film over the past 3.5+ decades? How has it remained popular, iconic in that way for so long? The cultural impact of Flash Gordon. It misses all of those opportunities. I finally just pulled the plug. Good luck to you, my friend. I hope the Lord, again, order the universe. Perhaps he will align your stars so that you could be featured again on the big screen. Maybe in a film called California Chainsaw Hookers or something. Yes. I mean, sometimes the Lord does use the world and worldly people and worldly things to help achieve his divine and perfect plan. You just never. California Chainsaw Hookers 7 might be the film that brings more people to Jesus. I just saying. Oh. Anyway, that's my first observation for the show today. These are the things that populate my little brain. Let's go to the switchboard and see what our listeners want to bring to the table. Area code 636. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, this is Thomas.
Thomas, how's your world, my friend?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm good. What do you want to talk about?
I was going to ask you how you felt about more conservative atheists, because I know that there are a lot of atheists, or a segment of atheists that tend to be supportive of Donald Trump and his policies, which I know me and you both disagree with. So I was wondering what you thought may lead somebody to think like this. I always thought, being pro-science was the first thing that would make somebody an atheist. So I was wanting your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a tough one, I mean, I'm a humanist first, right? I'm a humanist, which speaks to what I do believe and what my values are. And so, I in my own life, I'm not a liberal because I decided I need to be a liberal. I just sort of went point by point through the things that I think and the values that I hold. And it just sort of ended up on the liberal side, right? I mean, if we're talking about gay marriage, well, that's, on the left. If we're talking about right to die legislation, well, that's something that is being championed by the left. The legalization of marijuana and other drugs, that's on the left. The right of a woman to choose, that's on the left. I mean, there are exceptions to every rule, but, I just ended up on the left side of it. It's interesting to me to see people who hold to atheism, the lack of a belief in gods, but aren't necessarily aligning with the value set that I align with humanism. I don't know, that's an awkward way to say it, but I can say to myself, well, you reject a belief in gods, which makes you an atheist, but it doesn't necessarily say anything else about the rest of your life. And it's possible when it comes to things like the purpose and role of government and social programs. And the types of things I see in the Trump campaign so often align with these evangelical conservatives, the religious right. It's hard for me to reconcile someone acting as a humanist and embracing someone like Donald Trump. How do you feel about all this?
I pretty much agree with you. I mean, first off, me going to becoming a liberal, I did the same thing you did, point by point, and it wasn't just things that you mentioned, but also things like universal health care. I guess there is, like you said, there is a difference between being an atheist and being a humanist. It's not the same thing.
All right. Anything else?
That's all that's on my mind. Thank you, Seth.
All right, my friend, you take care, all right? It's hard talking about politics, sometimes harder than talking about religion. And it's really hard because nuance is dead. And I'm a lefty, and yet I watch many of my fellow liberals talk about conservatives as like one thing. Oh, they hate poor people. They're all a bunch of greedy bastards. And they're all racist and sexist and bigots and, well, I mean, some are, some are genuinely awful people, but you obviously haven't looked behind the curtain into the conservatives here in the United States. You may not have ever been one like I was. I understand. There are some people, they may reject the idea of God, but they are at the very least fiscal conservatives. They worry about the bloat, the bureaucracy, the overreach of government, what they think is the overreach of government, and the waste, the rampant waste of taxpayer money. I mean, this is just a reality. You've got this massive albatross of an institution with really no competition out there, and often not much incentive to streamline and to modernize and continue to improve itself and trim the fat and be as lean and mean as it can possibly be. And as such, you just find a lot of that money's just pissed away. It doesn't mean we're cheating our positions that social programs are necessary and that the government does have a major and important role. It's not cheating those things to admit that it's a beast. And fiscal conservatives are upset about that. And they're nervous about more and more government programs. Many of them are convinced that some of this stuff should be handled by the private sector. And already people are starting to lose their minds over that. Like healthcare, right? Healthcare. Who should handle it? Who is best equipped to handle it? Who will be most responsible and effective handling it? Now, I can hold the opinion, the liberal position, that I think it should be the role of government to provide this as part of all of the other taxpayer-funded services, the infrastructure that it provides, the services and support that government should provide to its people. I mean, taxpayers fund schools and roads and everything else, but somehow health care is off limits. That should be privatized. I think the government has a role there. I can hold that position while still having legitimate questions and concerns about how it is funded, how it's managed. The two don't cancel each other out. We don't live in a binary reality. So some of my fellow lefties will see me talking reasonably with someone who is a good person who, they think that the government needs to regulate it, but kind of, not run it. And they see me not losing my shit and screaming, "You hate poor people," and they don't understand it. They don't understand why my head isn't popping off my body, Why would you waste your breath on a Republican? They're beyond reach. The epitome of all that is wrong in the United States. They just want to see people die so they can dance on their corpses and then sell the ashes as part of a capitalist system that fills their own pockets, those greedy bastards. This is often what we have to deal with. And when we speak in hyperbole like this, it often cheats the reality. The reality is usually much more complicated. From the viewpoint of some fiscal conservatives, we're looking at businesses, private businesses. How much do they want government to mandate what they do and how they do it? And this gets us into these complex waters of our social contracts, social obligations, being a part of the larger community, the larger country, the obligations it has as a service or product provider to customers and potential customers. All of these things come into play. But many fiscal conservatives think that it's, they don't want government coming in and trying to run their business for them or imposing restrictions or just mucking up the work so much that it makes it harder for them to conduct business, make a profit, to grow and expand and succeed on their terms. Now, people already, my fellow liberals, some of them are already jumping over to, they're going to refuse to serve atheists. And these are some legitimate concerns. They're not going to bake a cake for the non-heterosexual married couple. That kind of thing. There is a legitimate concern there. But I'm talking about more of the fiscal stuff, not greed, not abuse, but people who simply think, look, I built it. I know how to run it. I'm happy to pay my taxes, but I just don't want governmental overreach to suffocate my hard work. Believe it or not, this is the position, and I think not an unreasonable position, of many fiscal conservatives. Okay? Of course, I think that businesses require regulation to a degree to protect the system, to protect consumers, and to hopefully prevent corruption. I know it's kind of a pipe dream, but we have to start somewhere. But how much regulation is enough? How much taxation is fair? These are conversations that we should all be having. And if a conservative falls on the "I think I'm taxed too much" side of the argument, believe it or not, my fellow liberals, there's a chance that these people are not the devil and they're not running around trying to steal money from poor people. And a shit ton of business owners are not these caricatures of the greedy CEO, but are people who busted ass, often for decades, and they want to protect their investment. They want to protect what they've built. I can be a liberal and still understand that, as we may disagree on the efficacy of government when it comes to regulations of this type or that. There are anti-abortion atheists. They have in their lives come to the position that they would rather err on the side of caution, or what they have determined is the side of caution when it comes to a fetus. Because when does human life begin? When does personhood begin? For them, that question trumps all others. When I was in the church, there was a lot of teaching about how life begins at conception, At that moment, there's a soul that is created. And of course, we've long ago rejected all of that. This cluster of cells is not a human being. That's an easy one. But the abortion question itself is not necessarily all that easy. If you look at the possibilities, if you look at the implications, when does personhood begin? You have these conversations about the moving fingers and the beating heart and the brain waves and all these things that are coming into play, and they simply don't want to get this one wrong. This is a legitimate fear of some people, and so they say, well, I'm against it. It may not be sound reasoning. It may, in fact, be an emotional protest. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're acting the way they act or voting the way they vote because they hate women and they want to strip the rights away of women. They're actually focused on the fetus. In my own life, I can say that the rights of the mother trump the rights of the fetus, and that it is the woman's body, it's the woman's choice. She gets to decide what happens. I can hold that position in a discussion, debate, argument with someone who thinks that a fetus or potential human being that cannot speak or act or defend itself needs to be defended by them. We can have that exchange. We can even have that disagreement. It still doesn't necessarily make them the devil. Now, beyond that, beyond the fiscal questions and some of these other ones, in terms of values, I think that you as a voting conservative don't get a pass when you cast a vote for Donald J. Trump or help to fuel and empower and enable the machine of the hugely evangelical Republican Party in the United States, pounding the pulpits and inviting the preachers for the invocations and invoking God, their specific God, left and right, justifying this and justifying that in the name of God, enjoying privilege awarded to them by their God as they do some tremendously alarming and destructive things on a day-by-day basis. Now, we're all familiar with the modular brain. They'll take this and put it in a box and they'll set it over here. And I think there are some conservatives who genuinely dislike Trump and they try to separate their conservatism and support for the Republican Party from Trump. Well, it's over here in a separate box. I don't really hold to him. But in my mind, I'm like, if you could ever cast a vote and be part of the machine of Donald J. Trump, if you could ever align yourself with the party of this man, a pathologically lying, sociopathic, egomaniacal, sexist, racist, predatory, increasingly deranged bully who stands against our values as humanists. I mean, he's just the antithesis of what we stand for as humanists. If you align with the party that is facilitating and fueling his power, I don't see how you can be on this guy's team and also be on the team of humanism. That does not jive in my head. Anyway, area code 815. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, Seth. My name is Kyle.
Kyle, what's going on in your world, man?
So I've really, really enjoyed your podcast to begin with, but also I really, really love just your tone. You are non-confrontational, but yet really, really good with how you discuss and you dialogue, and just it's really inspirational. So thank you for inspiring a kind of someone new into the atheist universe, and I just really, really appreciate it, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. It means a lot. I mean, I'm far from perfect. I'm sure people can go back through my stuff with a fine-tooth comb and be like, he could have been much better. And I get frustrated, too. I mean, sometimes it is frustrating, but overall, I really do try to remember that we're talking to people. So thanks for saying that.
I have a group of friends I went to high school with. We're all in this big group text message that we've had for, honest to God, probably 5-6 years. And one issue that continually comes up in our kind of ha-ha poking fun at whatever, if it's Catholic Church or whatever, we have one girlfriend in this group that is she specializes in people that are post-brain injury, post-brain surgery. She goes and kind of helps in rehabilitation, make sure that everything at their home life is good. And she is the first to snap at all of us and defend religion, because her thing is it helps those that are recovering from brain injury. And, she basically says, don't paint with that broad brush. And I don't want to both sides it, but I'm kind of going, shoot, does she have a point? But at the same time, I really wish it wasn't religion that was that therapy.
I was talking to Dr. Andy Thompson about the placebo effect. People who take the sugar pill and believe that they're going to get better, right? But what people often overlook, and I've been guilty of this as well, is that the placebo effect is an effect. Like, people do feel better. They might experience some kind of physiological improvement.
Sure.
And, that's one of the arguments I have heard for individual religious belief. Someone's in the hospital and prayers for them, supposedly giving them the hope and structure and...
Exactly. So back off the snark because it's helping them. And
yeah. Well, the challenge, though, is that if you look at it statistically, there was a test done, this was almost a decade ago, I think, of people who were sick and prayed for and people who were sick and not prayed for. And it turns out that the people who were sick and prayed for actually did worse in terms of health because they felt a measure of pressure to recover. Remember that, at the end of the day, religion teaches that it is our fault that we are sick because we are sinners. And so if you have a bunch of prayer warriors who come in and say, we claim your healing, we're going to name and claim you back on your feet tomorrow, and it does not happen, the patients tended to take it personally, like it was their fault. They felt guilt and they felt shame, and that stress actually exacerbated some of their health problems. Drop me an email, seth@thethinkingatheist.com, and I will send you a link to the story and the study. And if I remember, I'll go back and put it in the description box of this broadcast as well. As far as she's concerned, only she can determine whether or not it's something she wants to do. But if you're trying to show her that the data just isn't there, I doubt she's listening, but you can always show her the survey and the study and see what she says.
And I think you were exactly right. Maybe it starts there before it's, you're right. I want to defend her and support her. She's doing wonderful, wonderful work, and she's so bright, but this is just that one element where I'm going, come on, don't go down that route.
And, if she's praying for patients, if it's an overreach from
that's the thing. It's not even her. She isn't the one pushing religion. She sees it in maybe the healing aspect of her patients and is kind of willing to go, all right, I guess, if that's what gets you better, gets you on the road to recovery, sure, why not?
I see. I misunderstood. I thought maybe she was going in and actually doing the prayer.
Oh, maybe I misspoke. Sorry about that.
If you're in a conversation, I welcome the opportunity for you to maybe show her that, check this out. And if you can do it in a way that is not confrontational and keeps her off the defensive, find out if she's interested. Hey, it's interesting. I saw some data that you might want to take a look at. Let me know if you'd like me to forward this to you, And,
sure, no, I'd love to.
I think it's very healthy for people who have belief to know that there are critical ideas and skeptical ideas and data out there. And it might be good for her to know that this narrative isn't the only narrative when it comes to prayer in the sick, okay?
I can't thank you enough. And in regards to the last call, I'll never forget quote from my father. He told me, son, I remember when I was young like you and poor and liberal, and then I grew up and I acquired things, and I just simply didn't want to share them with anybody, and that's why I'm a Republican. Thank you for your honesty, Dad. Okay.
Have a great day. I appreciate the call so much. Thank you.
You as well. Enjoy your day.
Hang on. I've got a second. Power of Prayer Medical Study. Okay, here is an article, back from 2006. This is from Scientific American. This was written by Christine Soares, June 19th, 2006. Seeking to assess the effect of third-party prayer on patient outcomes, investigators found no evidence for divine intervention. They did, however, detect a possible proof for the power of negative thinking. The 3-year study of the therapeutic effects of intercessory prayer, STEP, published in the April 4th American Heart Journal, was the largest ever attempt to apply scientific methods to measure the influence of prayer on the well-being of another. It examined 1,800 patients undergoing heart bypass surgery. On the eve of the operations, church groups began 2 weeks of praying for one set of patients. Each recipient had a praying contingent of about 70, none of whom knew the patient personally. The study found no differences in survival or complication rates compared with those who did not receive prayers. The only statistically significant blip appeared in a subgroup of patients who were prayed for and knew it. They experienced a higher rate of post-surgical heart arrhythmias, 59% of them versus 52% of unaware subjects. The research team, a psychologist, clergy, and doctors from 6 institutions, including Harvard Medical School and the Mayo Clinic, speculated that nerves might have been to blame. Anyway, that's the first part of the Scientific American article, and you can read the entire thing for yourself. It's interesting because people on both sides of the issue, of course, those of us who are like, we'd like to see some palpable, measurable effects of miracles and divine intervention when you pray. We, of course, remain hugely skeptical because the idea of chanting for healing as someone is undergoing a surgical procedure to us makes no sense. And, of course, the church is like, well, this is not proof, or they didn't study family prayers or the prayers of friends and loved ones, etc. But it's an interesting 3-year study, and it's something you should take a look at. When I return, we're going to go back to the switchboard and take another call, and I'm going to finish the show with a story of mine that's kind of a dumb story, but it's also kind of a good story. And I'm a storyteller, and many of our listeners enjoy hearing those types of sort of anecdotes and observations. I don't know. I just want to share it with you. Let us share together, my friends. That is coming up on the other side of this. Hang on. My lovely, wonderful, and amazing patrons get this show early. They get it commercial free. If you're not a patron, please check it out. Patreon.com/Seth Andrews. Today's kind of a potpourri of just observations and listener calls. We go back to the switchboard. I've got Athena on the switchboard. Athena, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast.
Hi, Seth. Thank you so much for taking my call.
What's going on?
Well, I recently lost my job. I'm a single mother of 2 kids, and I really don't have any family that can help me out. I was just, trying to look anywhere I can for help. I've been applying for jobs everywhere.
Can I ask what happened? I mean, it was just a downsizing? Or?
Well, they just said that, we were going to part ways. It's kind of a slow season. I was an escrow processor at a title company. They didn't really pick up their, momentum when the weather started getting nice. So I guess, they just had to trim somewhere.
Yeah. So are you now on the hunt for a position as, what do you call it? Is it an escrow processor?
Yeah, I'm an escrow processor. So basically when, people buy and sell real estate, I kind of, work with the lenders and the real estate agents to kind of get everything together.
I bet you've got some stories, Yeah. Wow. So what is it that I can do to help you? I mean, what do you need?
Well, I just started, a GoFundMe page. This is the first time I've ever done any of this before. I started a GoFundMe page, and I was just kind of hoping. I've seen, this kind of thing happen before, with your podcast and other people in the community just helping each other out. And I thought maybe I'd give it a shot.
Well, I get a ton of requests. It's impossible logistically to keep up with.
Right.
Even a large fraction of them, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's because the reach of the show is so vast and there are so many legitimate needs out there. At the same time, I'm one of those people that thinks that, if you can help in an individual circumstance, go for it. And so if I can share that link, that helps you, right? If I ask my listeners to go and check it out, do you have a goal on your fundraiser? Is there a certain amount that you need to get past the next, few weeks or whatever, or what?
Well, I put the goal at $2,000. The reason I put it at that is because I have my rent, bills, and car payments, so I kind of just adjusted, estimated for like the next month's rent at least, and car payment and things like that, just to get us by until I get a job. I've had a couple of interviews. I haven't had any callbacks, and this is really recent, so I just wanted to get it going now.
Hey, what the hell? I don't mind helping. I think this audience can help you get at least your basic needs met while you're out there sort of knocking on the doors and trying to create opportunity for you. I'm sorry that you lost your job, but shoot me that link. I will put it in the description box. And then I'm going to ask, in fact, I'm asking now my listeners to consider dropping, I don't know, 10, 20 bucks your way. And let's see if we can make sure your payments are covered until you're able to sort of start the next chapter. And all I ask is that whatever that chapter is, you keep us in the loop, like drop me a line or call the show again or send me an email, seth@thethinkingatheist.com, and kind of let me know what came of all this. Okay?
Yeah, of course. And, you know, I appreciate anything, you know. I know that it's hard for a lot of people, and a lot of people are losing their jobs, and a lot of things happen to a lot of people, you know. And I'm one of those people that I believe in pay it forward, you know. Anytime I have anything extra or anytime I can help anywhere, you know, referring people to other people for services or goods or, you know what I mean? I believe in that wholeheartedly.
I got you. Well, you know, because we believe that there is no, you know, divine intervention, right? I mean, we could pray for a new job, but you're going to go and take like a real world approach, and so will we. So shoot me that link. I'll put it in the description box. Everybody go toss her a few extra bucks, you know, toss her some movie night money or sushi money or something else. And let's see if we can get her over the next few weeks until the next pieces come together. And then you just let me know what happens, and we'll sort of hopefully put a positive exclamation point on the end of your story. Okay.
Yeah, and if anybody, you know, who's listening is living or works in the Kansas City area who, you know, maybe needs some help with or wants to send in my resume, you know, I'm all for it.
Kansas City escrow processor.
Yeah, or like office, you know, type thing. I've done like accounting and, you know, all kinds of things like that. So.
All right. She got skills. I like it. In fact, hang on just a second, Athena, and I'm going to get some information from you, and we'll exchange emails, and we'll make sure that we keep in touch. And I'll get that link in the description box, and you take care of yourself, okay?
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Something interesting happened the other day. Just thought I'd tell you about it because this is a show that's often about stories and encounters and experiences. This is not a consequential one. It's really nothing, but I thought it was interesting, and I just wanted to share it with you, okay? So when I was a teenager, my twin sister and I were on a bowling league. Yes, I have a twin sister, okay? She is 5 minutes older. And we love each other, and we're family, and we are as opposite as the day is long. Like, you will not find two people who exemplify night and day more than we do. But despite our differences, we have a good relationship. And when we were teenagers, we were both on a bowling league. Now, this is just standard bowling, right? We just call it bowling, 10-pin bowling. This isn't 9-pin or candle pin or any of the other variations of out there. There's one called duck pin bowling. This is bowling. 10 pins, you roll the ball, you knock them down. There are 10 frames in the game. And then if you make a strike in the 10th frame, you get 2 more balls. So essentially you get 12 opportunities to roll a strike. And if you roll 12 strikes, perfect frames, that is a perfect game of 300. Closest I ever came was like a 279 when I was 18 years old or something. Never again came close. I just had one of those days when the stars aligned. You know, I was in the zone, as athletes like to say. And I didn't bowl much after that. I got on with the rest of my life. And I played on a league a few years ago, but I really haven't done much of it. But I have been trying recently to socialize more, to get out beyond the conventions and the tour stops, which are amazing. But in my own life, in my own circle, to try to get away from the computer a little bit more and to interact with people a little bit more, to go and have some laughs around the table and to go participate in an activity and just get out and engage with the world. It's one of the reasons that I do a once-a-month horror movie night. I have friends over who are horror movie buffs, and we all enjoy a horror movie together. And we'll pop popcorn, and they'll drink wine. I drink root beer or whatever. And we have a great time. It's a chance to connect as people. And so a friend of mine said, hey, Wednesday night we have a bowling league, and we have an opening. One of our bowlers is moving to Texas. Would you like to take that slot? Would you like to roll with us every Wednesday night for the rest of the spring? And I said, sure, I'd love to be a part of it. I'm a little rusty, and they said, we don't care. And, of course, I'm a huge fan of The Big Lebowski. which is a movie that has bowling interwoven into its plot. And I just love to quote Lebowski. I've got a friend and fan, Philip Godfrey, gave me a Da Vinci Vitruvian Man t-shirt, with the man's arms outstretched. And it's got Lebowski's head on it, and it's got a bowling ball at the end of the hand. I actually wear that from time to time on Wednesdays just to get into the spirit, But it's fun. You go out and you have a good time. My average these days is 170, but the people that are bowling all around us, some of those people are serious. They roll in. They got like 9 bowling balls. And they got them stacked in these cases, these rollable cases. They'll have 9 balls. What do you need 9 bowling balls for? And you see all kinds of people at a bowling alley, and you see all kinds of rolls. Like there's one guy, he walks up and he's got kind of a crab walk when he goes up to roll the ball. There's another dude, he doesn't even use fingers. He just takes his big hands, he wraps them around the bowling ball, and he just flips it. And the thing spins so much, it looks like it's going to careen into the gutter, and then it whips back at the last second. There's a right-handed person, they throw essentially a left-handed ball. So they sort of cock their hand under and roll from the other side of the lane. It looks like they're going to break their wrist. And instead of rolling where the ball arcs like a right-handed ball, it actually reverses. They start on the opposite side of the lane. There's a guy who keeps earbuds, and I don't know what he's listening to. We're all hugely curious as to what's going on in his earbuds. But he keeps them down at his shoulder, and then right before he goes up, he puts the earbuds in his ear. And he's only up there for like 12 seconds. But whatever is going on in the earphones apparently helped to get him in the zone, to help him roll a strike. He also wears these funky spectral sunglasses. And as soon as he rolls, he takes the headphones out and he goes out and he socializes and carries on. And I gotta know, what's he listening to? Well, what's in the headphones? Is it Metallica? Is it a motivational speaker? And then there's one other guy that comes to mind. He's a great big dude, and he wears these denim overalls and a hat, and he looks like Super Mario. I swear to you, I call him Super Mario, not to his face. But when I'm referring to him, I'll tell Natalie about bowling night, and I just call him Super Mario, and he's got this really unusual voice. It's like it begins and ends right in the sort of the back of the throat. I remember we rolled against Super Mario and his team back in, I think it was February, right? And I noticed he's got some stuff stashed in his bowling bag, like not bowling balls, but other things, like a separate bag or something. And so everybody was all gathered around, and he was talking to him in his unusual voice that starts at the back of the throat. And he's like, "All right, everybody, I made sure to bring the essentials." And of course, I'm like, what did he say? He said he's brought the essentials, and he opens up this bag, and inside his bag is a shit ton of booze. And so everybody had, I don't know what they had, they were drinking in their styrofoam cups. So before the game even begins, he pulls out what looks like whiskey. He's like, "I got the whiskey right here. Let me top you all off." And he just goes all around the table and he fills up everybody's glass with booze. And throughout the night, they just got louder and rowdier and more raucous. And holy shit, it was a ride that night. And and every week it's the same deal. I keep an eye out for him, and he opens up his special bag. He's got the special potion. "Hey, everybody, you got the special potion here. We're going to juice everybody up for bowling night." That's how the guy is. Okay. I mean, but it's fun. It's fun. So this was a few weeks ago, and we're rolling against a team I can't remember, but I'm noticing that there's a guy on the lane next to us. His name is Bob. I noticed he rolls a pretty good ball. And I look up at his scoreboard, and I can see that he's got 4 strikes in a row to start the third game. Not uncommon. A lot of people can roll these long chains of strikes. It's a pretty common thing to see. But I thought, well, he's pretty good. So a few minutes went by, and I looked back up, and I saw that he now had 5 strikes in a row. And then 6 strikes in a row. 7 strikes in a row. And of course, this is when you start to think, holy shit, the guy's rolling a perfect game. I mean, if he continues on this course, he'll have a perfect 300. And this is in the bowling arena. This is when you don't want to jinx it, right? This is what people say. Well, don't say anything to him. You don't want to jinx it, or you don't want to psych him out or cause him to psych himself out. Just everybody be cool. But you can tell that people are starting to look over at his score. By the 8th frame, when he went up and he rolled the 8th consecutive strike, a crowd had begun to sort of gather. I mean, people were leaning in his direction. They really wanted to see this thing happen. Super Mario's over here to my left. I can hear him. He's like, holy shit, that guy's going to roll himself a 300. So I text Natalie and I say, hey, I think the guy next to me is going to roll a perfect game. Frame number 9. Bob walks up to the line and he takes his 4 steps and he rolls the ball. Boom. Strike number 9. There's 1 frame left. Now, if Bob can roll a strike at the beginning of the 10th, he gets 2 more. That's 12 consecutive strikes, a perfect 300 game, which he has never done before in his life. Now we can't help ourselves. Everybody comes over and we're all just looming over the guy's lane. Like half of the bowling alley just stopped. People grabbed their beverages and their phone cameras and everything else, and they all came over and they were hovering over Bob's lane, which had to have added to the pressure. And I'm right next to him watching, thinking, holy cow, I've never seen a 300 in person, And you can see he's nervous. He's trying not to think too much about it. He's trying to stay in the zone, trying to stay in the moment, but he's obviously having the time of his life and excited about the possibility, right? So we're all standing there. There's a big crowd of people. There must have been 50 people. We're all standing around his lane. And Bob's turn comes up. He's the last bowler in his team, what they call the anchor. 9 consecutive strikes on the board, and he goes up for the 10th frame. And he takes his position, and he rolls the ball, and he strikes. And the place erupts in applause. Now we're cheering for him. Now it's like a group thing. Like his victory is our victory. We are all in the moment. Like this was the Olympics. Okay. Now at this point, Bob is smiling ear to ear. He just can't contain it. So he tries to center himself. You can see he's doing that thing we all do. Most of us do when we're in competition. Just breathe. Just get in the moment. Get back in the zone. Focus. And he stands up at the line, and he takes his 4 steps, and he rolls another perfect strike. I mean, right in the pocket, a beautiful, no questions kind of strike. Super Mario's over here off to my left. He's been drunk for about 45 minutes. He's like, holy shit, that was one of the best strikes I've ever seen Bob roll. Now you can hear a pin drop. Okay. Now you can hear a pin drop. And I'm texting Natalie the play-by-play. Oh my God, the guy's got 1 frame left for a perfect game. And we're all just standing and we're watching Bob, who must have felt about 3 inches tall. Like, what if I blow it? I mean, that's what I'd be thinking. What if I blow it? And he went up and he grabbed his bowling ball. And he walked up to the line. You could see him. He took an extra second. He took a breath. And he took his 4 steps. And the ball hits the lane. It's got this beautiful arcing kind of a ball. He puts some curve on it, some spin on the ball, and it's able to wrap around and just hit that pocket nice and solid. That's how the roll is designed. So he releases the ball, and it's on the lane, and it's looking good, but it looks a little off. Like it's not quite the perfect shot that he'd had just a few minutes before. The ball comes out wide, and then it starts to curve in, as it usually does. And it hits just off the center of the pocket. Just off the center of the pocket. And there's some really weird pin action. I mean, it was not a solid ball. And there was a pin left standing. There was the 7 pin over here to the left. So as all the other pins sort of flew back, the 7 was sitting there just kind of teetering. And as everyone lived for those eternal 3 seconds without oxygen, we were all watching the 7 pin. We're all watching the 7 pin. And it drifts backwards out of sight and it falls down. And you probably could have heard that cheer in Kansas. People were cheering and high-fiving and hugging and raising their glasses and carrying on and having the time of their lives. They were really in Bob's moment. You know, it's stupid. It's, you know, you're rolling a bowling ball, for Pete's sake. But it's a day he'll remember for the rest of his life. It was something that we were all able to take part in. We were all able to sort of enjoy his moment. And I don't even know Bob. I had to go up and shake his hand and say, that was amazing. You know, congratulations. Good for you. That's fantastic. And he looked like he had just won the lottery, you know. He's going to have his name on the wall. From now on, there'll be his name with 300 underneath it. Good for him. And as I was driving home afterward, I was thinking about this in probably overthinking it really in kind of a philosophical sense. This one little event, this inconsequential thing, had brought both friend and stranger together, people who were able to really enjoy the success of somebody else. Bob having a good night on the bowling alley doesn't affect my life one iota, not really, nor anybody else who was standing in the circle. Anybody who was cheering and carrying on and raising a glass and high-fiving him and all that stuff. I mean, it wasn't their victory, but yet you saw people who saw someone else in a good place or having an opportunity or seeing, you know, sort of the stars align, so to speak. And they thought, man, that's amazing. I want to be a part of that. I want to support that. I want to go and be a part of that memory, be a part of the experience. They were able to share in Bob's success instead of being jealous, instead of being petty and saying, well, shit, I've never had a 300. I hope he fails. Or finding a reason to root against him or cause a distraction or any of these other things. But to come together and just say, hey, you know, we're rooting for you. We want you to win. And you know, the truth is, I wish there was a whole lot more of that in the world. I've been listening to this audiobook on Audible. This is not an Audible commercial. I'm just listening to this book on Audible called The Examined Life, How We Lose and Find Ourselves. It's by Stephen Gross. He's a product of Berkeley and Oxford. He lives in London, and he wrote this book based on his career, this decades-long career as a psychoanalyst. And it's just anecdotes, life stories, and examinations of how those stories relate to the rest of us. I think it was chapter 13 or 14, he talks about envy. He was telling a story that has to do with envy. And I'm trying to remember at the moment, I think it was a parent who had envied their child, something along those lines. And it was an interesting exploration into why we get jealous of other people, why we often envy other people. And this is hugely complex. I'm not trying to put it all in a cookie cutter, but there are specific examples that he gives. He talks about parents who do envy their children. The kids have opportunities, have skills and talents, intelligence. They're just luckier than they were. And so instead of being able to enjoy those moments by watching the success of another, their own child, they're always trying to diminish it. You know, oh, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have these luxuries. Well, my childhood was a hell of a lot harder than your childhood. I mean, if I'd have had what you had, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're always trying to sort of deflect and diminish. And often there's a reason for that, this envy and jealousy, which I think speaks to some real holes inside someone's own identity. They're unhappy with themselves, perhaps hugely insecure about themselves. Maybe there's some other driving factor, but there's a vacuum somewhere in here. And so rather than be able to genuinely enjoy watching someone else survive and thrive and succeed and accomplish great things, they always have to sort of chip away at it. You ever met somebody like that? And in the book, he talks about, you know, there are psychiatrists who are envious of even their patients. You know, the patients come in with all the problems. But what happens when the patient who walks in is a millionaire who has a yacht, who has this, who has that, who travels the world, or who has a story or even a personality that goes far above and beyond what the psychiatrist or psychologist has. And the doctor then might find themselves envying the patient. Sometimes a teacher or professor might envy a student. Somebody's in the classroom and they look and they think, geez, you know, I wish I'd had what they had. Why don't I have what they have? Why couldn't my life have been like that? I mean, there are people in this world who really did get the short end of the stick, and they're having to overcome some tremendous obstacles. Obviously, some that cannot be overcome. I mean, the deck is stacked so far against them. So I'm not really talking about that as much as the person who doesn't have a contentment in their own heart. They're not fulfilled enough in their own heart. They're not secure enough in their own identity to be able to look at someone right next to them who's having a great day or having a great opportunity or just got really lucky and say, good for you. I'm happy for you. I feel good that you feel good, which is kind of tragic because that's a legitimate kind of joy. I mean, it really is something. You get off an airplane and you walk up the jetway and you're on the concourse and you're walking past all the gates toward baggage claim, and you have to go through that security checkpoint, and you walk through the glass door, the revolving door, whatever door, there's a security guy there, and you get past it and you look and you see that there is someone, there's a family or a group of friends or whatever, and they've got signs and balloons and they're waiting on someone who was on your flight. I mean, they're craning their necks and they're straining themselves to try to see through the glass to see if the person that they're waiting for is about to come through the security checkpoint so they can cheer and hug and everybody can have this big moment. And it's not for you and it's okay. You find yourself smiling anyway. You find yourself sharing in the moment anyway, even though you don't know these people. You might even be in baggage claim when that moment arrives. You might not even see it happen, but it still brings joy. Somebody else posts their vacation videos on Facebook, and you're like, oh, I've never been there. But you're not pissed off that you haven't been there. You think, wow, one day I'd like to go there, and good for them. You're at a restaurant. Somebody else gets the happy birthday song. Actually, I know some people who are terrified of having the happy birthday song sung to them. They don't want the attention. There's a restaurant here. It's a chain. They're all around, but Texas Roadhouse. Now, this is Oklahoma. If it's your birthday, they bring a saddle out, and you go out and you sit on the saddle. You may even get a cowboy hat, and everybody sings the birthday song. But, when you see that kind of thing happen to someone else, you do find yourself smiling. Sometimes you sing along, even if you're tables away from the actual party. Just a few thoughts to leave you with. You can take it or leave it, but I would encourage you, if you can, if you do feel so inclined, make somebody else feel important today, or allow yourself permission to share in the goodness that happens to them. It really can be an amazing thing. Have a wonderful week. I will see you back here as we kick off the month of May with a brand new broadcast. I will see you then.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.